Is Apple losing the AI race? Italy lifts the ban on ChatGPT as OpenAI unveils new privacy controls, and the World Wide Web turns 30. These stories and more as we bring you the top tech news stories for Monday, May the 1st. I'm your host, Jim Love, CIO of ITWC, IT World Canada, and Tech News Day in the US. Is Apple falling behind in the race to generative AI a failure or a brilliant strategy? A report in The Information details how late last year, a trio of engineers who had just helped Apple modernize its search technology began working on large language models and generative AI, much like the OpenAI systems that had taken the world by storm. But to do this type of leading-edge work, the three top engineers left Apple to go to work for Google. According to that report, the three were recruited directly by Google's CEO, with Apple's Tim Scott unable to convince them to stay. According to reports, this top-level defection is a reflection of a wider frustration with Apple's conservative and go-slow approach to AI. For example, a report in Ars Technica claimed that the team working on another slow-to-market technology, Apple's mixed reality VR headset, was so frustrated with the underlying technology of Siri that it considered developing a totally new voice control system for the headset. Siri, Apple's legacy voice control system, is not generative AI. It is a highly structured and equally limited control system consisting of a limited number of human-written questions and responses. And it's not that Apple isn't working on AI initiatives. John Giannadria, Apple's head of AI, originally recruited from Google, has been working since 2018 to bring together the various AI initiatives to make the company more competitive in this area. But most of their focus has been on a very practical set of applications, primarily improvements in user experience for the iPhone and the iPad, new biometric security to eliminate passwords, photo editing tricks, and improvements to user help with applications. Solid, but certainly not sexy or even leading edge. It's a strategy that has worked before for Apple. Let others do the bleeding edge development and pick up the pieces as they crash and burn. Their metaverse strategy is a case in point. Meta has thrown billions into a strategy that has drawn scorn at its legless avatars. Google has two unsuccessful launches of Google Glass, and Microsoft is reportedly struggling with its expensive and nausea-inducing VR headset. Apple has been able to work quietly at its own pace, avoiding a splash and burn. Siri may have her frustrations, but she has avoided scandals like Microsoft's Sydney, whose AI hallucinations have led to reports of the AI trying to lure a reporter away from his wife or threatening to ruin the reputation of another. Similarly, Siri has not made huge and obvious mistakes in answering factual questions, as Google's Bard did in a recent demonstration, a gaffe that led to a $100 billion decline in share value. There are risks to the blinding speed of development that Apple's competitors are caught up in. But the defection of the three top engineers shows the slow but steady strategy also has risks. Could it lead to a brain drain from Apple? And if so, is there a point where its ability to innovate is compromised? It's a tough question, but one that will have big implications for a company that has lived by the slogan, "Think different." Is ransomware going to be with us forever? Is it the COVID of cybersecurity? According to reports in Axios, that's the general tone from this year's RSA Cybersecurity Conference that wrapped up last week. The RSA conference attracts vendors and experts from around the world, some of whom appear to be coming to a consensus that ransomware will be with us far into the foreseeable future. Ransomware, as many know, is a pervasive threat which has turned cyber attacks into a hugely profitable business where the company that is the victim is blackmailed into paying a ransom, usually in untraceable Bitcoin. Either the data is encrypted and held for ransom, or stolen with threats of release of highly confidential data, or the company's threatened with denial of service attacks, sometimes all three. And while the worldwide number of ransomware attacks has declined from its peak in 2021, it's still the major threat to many companies. Cybersecurity company Sophos presented a study at RSA that claimed ransomware is at the heart of 68% of cybersecurity attacks. Now, one reason that ransomware will continue to survive, if not thrive, is geopolitical. Many of the threat actors are protected or benignly ignored by Russia and other rogue states. Rob Joyce, the NSA Director of Cybersecurity, told reporters during a briefing at RSA that Russian hackers are attacking not only Ukrainian, but also companies in all Western allied countries. A second reason is that many companies don't have effective prevention and user education programs and continue to fall behind on even basic cyber hygiene. And third, even though more companies say they will not pay a ransom, there are still enough that will pay to make this a highly profitable business, now and into the near future. The Hacker News reported this weekend that ChatGPT is back in operation in Italy after promising to make some big changes in terms of privacy and safety. Although a number of European countries had expressed concerns, it was Italy's Data Protection Authority that took the extreme step a few weeks back of actually blocking ChatGPT effective March 31st. OpenAI, in a new FAQ, says that it filters hate speech, adult content, excessive or unnecessary aggregation of personal information, and, of course, prevents spam. OpenAI states ChatGPT and our other services are developed using information that is publicly available on the internet, information that we license from third parties, and information that our users or human trainers provide. In response to recent incidents where private or even highly sensitive data has been shared and presumably incorporated into the ChatGPT model, OpenAI has increased its warnings and even offers a privacy mode where users can specify that no information from a user session will be retained after that session is completed. But specifically addressing Italy and other European concerns, the company has promised that it will comply with the European General Data Protection Regulations, GDPR, and that they have completed a data protection impact assessment to ensure that they are collecting and using information legally and responsibly. While some degree of personal information is a requirement of training, particularly to store information about individuals in the public eye, the company promises to reduce the processing of personal information when training our models. For example, we remove websites that aggregate large volumes of personal information, and we try to train our models to reject requests for private or sensitive information about people. OpenAI also notes it will not sell its training information. As well, OpenAI has made it clear in this FAQ exactly how anyone whose data is collected can ask to have it removed by filling out a form or giving an email address that individuals can write to. Based on this, Italy has agreed to lift its ban, and all of this was announced as the European Parliament is poised to approve a draft of the EU's Artificial Intelligence Act in a committee meeting on May 11th, in preparation for a vote by member states to enact the new law. And the World Wide Web turned 30 yesterday. On April 30th, 1993, scientists from CERN introduced the start of a wave of developments that turned a geeky set of networking standards and operations into what we would call the World Wide Web. In its early days, it gave us HTML, the web browser, and it led to the global networking of vast resources that we tap into daily. It was, by today's standards, a very primitive development, one HTML page that still exists to this day. At the time, the web was seen as a way of providing free and open access to research and other information. It was to be freely shared. Tim Berners-Lee, the inventor of the web, never sought profit, never patented it, or protected it in any way. What Lee didn't envision was how corporate interests would shape and even control his invention. The web has changed how information was disseminated and shared. It made encyclopedias virtually extinct, for example, but it's doubtful anyone saw the commercial impact of e-commerce, nor did they predict the social media networks that dominate our lives. In later years, Berners-Lee was, in his words, devastated by what his invention had become. He told Vanity Fair in a 2018 interview, "We demonstrated that the web had failed instead of served humanity as it was supposed to have done, and failed in many places." But Lee remained hopeful that there would be ways to decentralize control once again. Whether that vision will ever be realized is, especially at the advent of an AI-driven internet, an unanswered question. That's the top tech news for today. We go to air with a daily newscast 5 days a week, as well as a special weekend interview with an expert on topics relevant to today's tech news. You can follow us on Google, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and you can get us on your Alexa or Google Smart Speaker. We love your comments. You can find me on LinkedIn, Twitter, or on Mastodon as @TheRealJimLove on our Mastodon site, technews.social. Even on Twitter, no blue check. Or if that's too much, just leave a comment under the text version at itworldcanada.com/podcasts. Check the box or mark the X, and you can leave a comment. It'll come directly to me. I'm your host, Jim Love. Have a marvelous Monday.